What's up, guys, and welcome to the first episode of GameScript for the 2025 NFL season. This is season 3 of GameScript, and we're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Dallas Cowboys. And we have a situation where Micah Parsons was just traded from the Dallas Cowboys, and people are very high on the Eagles this week. But should they be? We're going to get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching GameScript. This is a show where we break down single individual games, and this week we have the first game of the season between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. We're looking at a 47.5-point total with 7.5-point spread in favor of the Philadelphia Eagles. Micah Parsons trade had an influence on that, and we are looking at a Dallas team that is getting ridiculed all over the media. They're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder, and the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously the Super Bowl defending champions, coming into this one, playing in Philadelphia. So things are looking good towards the Philadelphia Eagles, and we're going to break this game down and take a look at some of the matchups, some of the disadvantages that the Eagles might have, which might make an opening for these Cowboys to put up some points. Before we get into this, make sure to hit the like button. I'm looking for 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on in the week. I'm going to probably put out another episode as we get closer to game time. I wanted to get this one out early. Done a lot of research on this game, and I wanted to get a show out there with some analysis for you guys early. I know it was very difficult to find analysis on this showdown slate right now. We'll take a look at the FanDuel slate as well, because FanDuel has upped their game and improved their MVP style of gameplay over there on FanDuel for their individual games. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're looking for, got about 1,600 subscribers now. I want to get to 2,000 subscribers, hopefully by week 2 or 3. So hit the subscribe button. You're going to want to subscribe because probably by around week 2 or 3, I'm going to be introducing a secret weapon for our showdown slates and for fantasy football in general. DFS, betting, like fantasy football, whatever you do. I'm introducing a new news site that you guys are going to be interested in, taking a lot of what I use for building my showdown lineups and doing my analysis. If you guys have followed me the last few years, we've built many winning showdown lineups on this show. I'm not talking about just cashing. I'm talking about winning these $15 tournaments on DraftKings and winning these massive tournaments on FanDuel as well. So we're going to be breaking that down. Make sure to subscribe. I'm looking for, like I said, I'm looking to get to about 2,000 subscribers. If you subscribe, sign up for the alerts. You're going to want the alerts because when I announce this new tool, it's going to probably change the way you research, or at least help improve the way that you research. It's going to be a nice tool for finding news on these players. So you're going to want to subscribe to the YouTube channel because I'm going to be offering a free beta version of this to all my YouTube subscribers when the time comes. So make sure you're locked in and ready for that. Now, let's get into this breakdown of the game. We are looking at DraftKings. First, I'm going to break down the situation here. I do think that the Cowboys are being a little bit undervalued here. That's mainly because Micah Parsons is gone from the team. And with him being gone, the team has just been, like I said, getting ridiculed left and right in the media. Jerry Jones, everyone is making fun of Jerry Jones. Probably deserved, but at the same time, the team isn't going to want to go in against a rival on week 1 and be humiliated. And they are probably going to come out slinging because they're going to want to put in a statement in this game. Their defense probably isn't good enough to handle the Eagles' offense, so they're going to probably be coming out with an aggressive game plan. We know that Brian Schottenheimer is the new head coach of the Cowboys. He's the former offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, promoted once they got rid of Mike McCarthy. And Schottenheimer is a guy who likes to pass the ball, and we should see that here this week as the Cowboys come out pretty aggressive. Dak Prescott, of course, was hurt last year. He comes back this year, and is probably looking to make a statement of his own. He's come in a top about 5 fantasy quarterback his last few seasons that he's played the entire season, and he should be ready to come out slinging in this week 1 against a division rival in the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles have lost half of their secondary in the offseason. They lost Darius Slay, they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson, they lost Isaiah Rodgers, and they lost Avonte Maddox. So a lot of losses in that secondary for the Eagles, which are going to have some implications because with Avonte Maddox, especially being out, that's going to be significant for Cooper DeJean because he's probably going to have to move around a little bit more to the outside. He's primarily been their nickel corner. He kind of plugged that hole pretty well for the Eagles last year, became one of the best nickel corners in the league last year, and now he's going to be gone. I mean, he's not gone, but he's going to probably be needed to guard more on the outside. So he's going to be not as much of a factor in the nickel throughout the entire game, depending on what the defensive game plan is for the Eagles in this one. So don't be surprised to see them a little bit more susceptible in the slot in this one, which is good news for CeeDee Lamb. It's also good news for another lesser known or lesser owned player we'll get into in a minute, but CeeDee Lamb should have a better matchup if DeJean is guarding a little bit more on the outside. All right, so we're going to get into Jalen Hurts. First, let's look at Barkley. Barkley obviously had that monster season last year, almost hit 2,000 or almost broke the record for rushing yards in the season last year. He ended up coming just short in the last game of the season when they benched him. But Barkley, monster year last year. He should have a decent situation here against the Cowboys as well. They gave up only 23.2 DraftKings points a game to running backs last year, which was kind of a middling stat. They were more susceptible to the pass, but with Barkley, anything is possible with him. We look at his games last year against Dallas, 167 yards in the second game versus them and 66 yards in the first game versus them. So a mixed bag there, but still obviously capable of putting up a monster game. If we're looking at Jalen Hurts, keep in mind with Barkley too, if the Eagles do end up, coming out and having a monster lead against the Cowboys, we could look for a muted performance from Saquon as they start to rest him more in that second half, and that goes for any of these Eagles starters too. Gives all the more reason for focusing more on this Cowboys offense, but Jalen Hurts, he's the biggest threat to Saquon Barkley. Those guys were dueling with those rushing touchdowns. Obviously, when they get down to the 1 yard line, he's a massive threat to Saquon Barkley. Barkley had to score most of his touchdowns from a little further away from the end zone last year. But we know with the tush push that Jalen Hurts is going to be he's going to be in play, obviously. If we look at Jalen Hurts history versus the Cowboys, I have to do this a little bit different this year because Pro Football Reference, for whatever reason, seems to have gotten away from their matchup versus teams on their site that I use a lot. All right, so we're looking at Jalen Hurts. I'm going to look at StatMuse here. So versus Dallas, this is 342 yards, 326 yards, 155, 207, 197, and 202 yards. Last year, his only game against Dallas, he was resting on the second game they played him, but had 202 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, they had a big win that week, and Dak wasn't playing in that game, so it's kind of hard to look at last year's stats when judging these performances. I would focus primarily on the 2023 when Dak was actually playing, but he had 207 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Trying to see if they're not showing his rushing yards in that game, unfortunately. Gonna have to get used to looking at these new reference points here in these stats. But Jalen Hurts, obviously a rushing threat. Less of a rushing threat last year when we had Saquon Barkley in the game, but Jalen Hurts obviously can run the ball, runs in those short distance touchdowns, taken away from Saquon Barkley, like I mentioned before. But he's going to be in play as well. You might want to mix and match your Barkley lineups to swap in Jalen Hurts for an alternative build of your lineups. Just keep that in mind when you're building this week. A.J. Brown missed most of the preseason. I'm not very high on A.J. Brown this week just because he's expensive and he missed most of the preseason. He might come out of the gate a little bit slow. I would not be surprised if that happened. I'm more interested in Devontae Smith. I think that also with A.J. Brown, when they play man versus zone coverage, he tends to be targeted more under man. Matt Eberflus is the new defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's primarily a zone defense guy. So when the Eagles face zone defense, that reduces A.J. Brown's target share from about 37 to about 22, and that puts him in line with Devontae Smith. So if you're looking at these two guys salary wise, we're talking $14,000 for A.J. Brown versus Smith, who is $12,600. So you get a little bit of a salary savings there, about $1,600, which could end up making a difference for us. But when we get into the build, we'll keep that in mind. But I tend to lean Devontae Smith in this one. He against Dallas last year, looking at 14 yards in the first game, not a big game there, and 120 yards in the second game, and 2 touchdowns. So I had a monster second game versus Dallas last year. Dallas, as far as their performance against slot receivers, opponents tend to target slot receivers at a higher clip than wideouts versus Dallas. They were targeting wideouts at a 43.7% clip versus a, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's 43.7 versus wideouts versus 30.2 versus slots. So wideouts were who opponents were targeting versus Dallas last year. But I do still like Devontae Smith in this matchup versus A.J. Brown, just based on like their potential target shares in this one. and the fact that AJ Brown took most of the offseason off, or most of the preseason. So if we're looking at George Pickens is our next guy. I think that Pickens is a guy that I'm very interested in this game. Like I said, like the missing components of that Eagles secondary. The new guys moving in are going to have a difficult time to, like adjust to that defensive scheme. It takes a very much a lag of players getting used to it. Most of the components are still there for Vic Fangio's defense, but some of these secondary guys might struggle a bit. And that's going to open the door for Dak to throw to George Pickens. I like George Pickens a lot in this game, and we might have him as a captain option. When we get into the build, we'll dig more into that. He's going to be a cheap captain option. I don't know what his ownership is, though, so keep that in mind. Pickens is more of an ownership play. He's a high-end, high upside guy that could break the slate if he has a monster game, but depends on what his ownership in that captain spot is going to be. So skipping down past to Dallas Goedert. Goddard's another guy, a weapon for Jalen Hurts. He had a decent season last year towards the end. He was coming alive. Dallas was pretty good against tight ends last year, only allowing 8.9 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. But I do like Dallas Goedert as a potential guy that we can mix and match with if we only wanted to use one Eagles receiver, he could be a guy that we use. If we look at his games last year versus Dallas, keep in mind different defensive scheme with Eberflus coming in, 25 yards and he may have missed the other game versus Dallas. He missed a few games last year, so not very used in that game that they played against Dallas last year. So keep that in mind. Scrolling down a little bit more past more of these quarterbacks, the running back situation for Dallas is going to be interesting in this one. First of all, Eagles are really good versus running back. They're only allowing 16.2 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So these Cowboys running backs are already going to be in rough shape versus this Eagles defense. But then on top of that, we're not really sure how it's going to shake out. The one thing that's good for Williams is that the Jaden Blue rookie that people were expecting to kind of take this backfield, he sprained his ankle in his last preseason game that he played. So he's questionable for this game. It's likely that he's not going to get a huge load with the situation to his ankle. So don't be surprised if he's out for the game or doesn't play or plays very limited role, which will be good for Williams. Would also be good for Sanders, but Sanders is hurt too. If we're looking at Sanders, let's take a look here. He's got a shoulder injury, so that's not as big a deal for a running back. But he also missed time in training camp with a bruised knee. So, pretty banged up Miles Sanders, but he is playing a revenge game against the Eagles, his former team. So, Miles Sanders, I wouldn't take him out of your player pool, but he's banged up. That's looking good for Javonte Williams to take on the biggest role in this Dallas running game. But the Dallas running game is going to be in rough shape. They got a bad offensive line. The Eagles are good against the run. And just in general, this is shaping up to be more of a Dallas passing situation, which brings us to Ferguson. Jake Ferguson last year against Philly, only 24 yards in one game and 11 yards. He was not much of a factor once Dak Prescott went out last year. Definitely a disappointing season for Ferguson last year. But, look for him to bounce back a bit this season. I don't know how well he's going to do against Philly. Philly is strong against the tight end as well, only allowing 10.5 DraftKings points a game. So, not sure I want to have a ton of exposure to Jake Ferguson this week. Aubrey could be interesting if Dallas is able to move the ball and then get stopped in the bend don't break defensive scheme of Vic Fangio. Don't be surprised if they stop the Cowboys as they get closer to the red zone, and that enables Aubrey to score some field goals this week. Eagles defense. I like the Eagles defense against the Cowboys. Just a lot of things going wrong for the Cowboys, and the Eagles D is just they're a great defense. I love Vic Fangio there, and like I said, some of the cornerbacks are gone this year, but just overall, just a really strong defensive front. Don't be surprised if the Eagles defense is in the optimal lineup this week. Jake Elliott. I'm not as high on Jake Elliott as I am on Aubrey. I think the Eagles are going to be having an easier time scoring touchdowns. I believe last year they scored on 50% of their drives versus the Cowboys. I believe that was a stat by Rich Rebar this week. But Jake Elliott, I would not be surprised to see him play a decent role. 2 for 2 versus Dallas last year in one game. And let's see, the other game, 2 for 2. So 2 field goals in each of the games last year. So, don't be surprised if Jake Elliott, was able to put up like 8 or 9 points this week, maybe even more than that. Mechie was a pickup for the Eagles. I don't think he's going to be acclimated enough yet to this offense. Keep in mind, Jalen Hurts likes to throw to his favorites, and it's very difficult for one of these wide receiver threes or beyond to make a significant impact on this offense. Cowboys defense, not super high on them against this Eagles offense. I would tend to ignore that. If we're looking at Tolbert, not really interested there. There is a guy that I am interested in. Dotson could be in play this week. He's on his second season with the Eagles. Like I said, they tend to favor their main 3 guys, which would be A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. But don't be surprised if Dotson has some impact in this game. He was practicing with Jalen Hurts in the offseason. They trained together a lot. So Dotson could be in store for a game in this one. And keep in mind, he had a couple sneaky catches in the beginning of the Super Bowl last year. So Dotson could be in play this week. Not interested in Dillon. A.J. Dillon is now on the Eagles. Cavante Turpin is a guy that I'm interested in. That stuff that I was saying earlier about Cooper DeJean, maybe having to move a little bit out of the nickel. That's going to make the Eagles susceptible to the slot. That obviously benefits CeeDee Lamb, but I think that benefits Cavante Turpin too. He's kind of a gadget player. And, we saw some big games out of him last year. He actually ended up having a really good season last year. Let's see how he did versus Philly. He didn't do anything in the second game versus them, or I guess that's the first game. Second game, he ended up having 4 targets, 16 yards, but I think he's a guy that's going to be sneaky for us this week. So Cavante Turpin is a guy that we're going to want to keep in our player pool. I think, with the Dallas desperation situation going on this week, I think he's going to be needed. They're going to need to run some of these gadget plays. And like I said, if they're targeting these slot receivers, then Cavante Turpin is going to be, I think, getting some usage. He also is going to be a useful tool out of the backfield because obviously, like we talked about with that Dallas run game being weakened this year, Cavante Turpin is going to be an interesting play this week. Terrace Marshall, I think they just dropped him. So he's not even, he's on the practice squad apparently. So keep that in mind with Marshall. Calcaterra, not interested there. Will Shipley. Will Shipley is another guy. Like if they take a big enough lead, we could see Shipley getting some action in the second half. He's a 3K guy, $3,000. So Will Shipley, we could see some usage out of him, depending on if they decide to rest their starters in that second half, if it's a blowout situation. A lot of guys here on the IR or were dropped off their teams. Let's see if we can dumpster dive here. Lipke, he might be interesting in that same way that Turpin would be, but Kevontae Turpin is explosive, and I like that guy a lot. Looking down at some of these cheaper guys, I don't see anything now. I'm going to be doing more digging as the week goes on, so make sure to subscribe to the channel and watch out for another show later on in the week where I have a chance to do deeper dive on some of these ancillary players. But reminder again, hit that subscribe button. Help me get to 2,000 subscribers before we build this lineup here. Make sure to hit that like button. Get me to 30 likes. I'll put my favorite players in the comment section, or I'll do a second video later on the week with my favorite players, depending on what my schedule allows. So make sure to hit that like button, because I'm going to need 30 likes in order to do that. And if you guys remember last year, the comment section, we had some of the best plays ended up in there. Ricky Pearsall, captain towards the end of the year last year, was one of them. Just a few times during the year where last minute research ended up leading to plays like that. So definitely subscribe to the channel and hit the like button so we can get those picks out. All right, guys. So let's start building the first lineup. Probably do a chalky build on this one. I think a lot of people are going to have Barkley in there as their captain. They'll probably have this Eagles defense in along with Barkley. I'm guessing on the Cowboys side, we're going to see a lot of CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. So let's go with let's get Dak in there. Let's see what happens if we get Prescott in there as well. I mean Lamb in there as well. Going to leave us with 4,400 per position. If we put in Aubrey, leaves us with 4K. Looking at a 3-2 build so far. So if you wanted to throw in another guy, maybe you could go with Tolbert or Dotson, Turpin. You got a lot of options. You could go Turpin and go with that 4-2 build. That way you got Prescott, throwing to a couple receivers, and then they got Aubrey in there too for the bend don't break scenario that I spoke about. You could replace, if you replace Dak with Hurts, that leaves us with 2K. That leaves us in the Shipley range. So this one, we would get all the rushing out of the Eagles with Hurts, Barkley, and Shipley. And then we'd have the Eagles defense. And then we're running it back with CeeDee Lamb racking up PPR points, and we would have Aubrey in there as well. If we wanted to switch it up, hit that like button, hit the subscribe. Let's take a look at a build with the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb will probably be a popular captain. Let's go with Lamb. Let's get Barkley in there. Let's get Dak since we got Lamb in there. Let's get that Eagles defense in there again. I think they're going to be popular. They're in that cheap range. If we got Barkley out there, then let's put Elliott in. Maybe that gets us 4,600. That leaves us options like Mechie, Cowboys D, Jalen Tolbert, Dotson. Those guys that Turpin, guys that I had mentioned earlier. I think the way that I've been building these, I'm leaving a lot of salary on the table, or at least a decent amount. Maybe you guys have a different strategy in mind, but that's kind of been what I've been doing. If you wanted to swap out Barkley for Hurts, that puts Aubrey in play, double kicker. I'm not necessarily like double kicker in this one. If you want to get rid of Aubrey and maybe we put in Goddard. That leaves us with 2,800. We put in Goddard, we can get Turpin in there. So that's an interesting build right there. It's a 3-3 build with Prescott, Lamb, and Turpin. And then we're on the other side, we got Hurts to Goddard and the Eagles. So that's an interesting one. Now, if we want to go an interesting direction here, like I said, I like Pickens as a captain option. I think they're going to be playing from a little bit aggressive in this one. And I think that Dak to Pickens is going to be a good connection this week. I'm going to put Barkley in there. I like one of these Eagles receivers. I'm going to go with Smith. I'm going to go with that Eagles D again. And I'm looking at 4,800 for my last play. I could go again with Aubrey or Elliott, one of the kickers, or I could go down a little bit and look more at something like putting Turpin in there. If I put Turpin in there, I'm leaving money on the table. So if I wanted to swap out of the Eagles D, that would leave me with an option like Goddard. If I went with Goddard, I would probably take Barkley out and put in Jalen Hurts. That leaves me with an option like Goddard, which I think is a pretty strong build because we got the Hurts to Smith and Goddard, and then we're running it back on the other side with Prescott to Pickens, and we got Turpin in there. So that's an interesting build. If you wanted to leave money on the table, again, we got those options like Ferguson. We got, let's see, where's Williams? We got Williams as an option there too. 5,400 for a starting running back is not a bad price. We got Aubrey, Eagles D. We just took those guys out. What if we got rid of Turpin and we put Goddard in there? Can't quite get to the Eagles D, unfortunately, but we can get. We got like Shipley as an option. We got Turpin as an option. So a few options there. Now let's go over to FanDuel. FanDuel, I haven't done a lot on this show just because their single game setup was not. It just was not good. Like they didn't do the 1.5 times the 1.5 times the salary. So it was basically, here, we're going to share this tab instead. So we were basically looking at, it was just too easy. Like, and when you shipped over there, you were only winning like a couple $1,000 versus, like a million or less that you could be making on DraftKings. It was just like a much worse setup over on FanDuel. So this year, though, they changed it up. It's now 6 slots, and the MVP, you get 1.5 times the points, but you got to pay 1.5 times the salary. So let's try a build over here. Again, if we want to do, like Barkley and the captain, let's see what that does for us. 7,600 per player. If we do that, I want to get Dak in there. Let's get Pickens in there. 6,400 per person. Let's go to the cheap seats here. Dumpster dive a bit. Where's our guy Turpin? Let's see. $2,800 for Turpin. That's going to leave us $8,200 per guy. Dallas or Philly defense, I like that again here. That's going to leave us options like Dallas Goedert, Javonte Williams, Brandon Aubrey, like Jake Elliott. So we got a lot of good options there. That's a pretty good build for Saquon Barkley. Again, like Pickens, I like him more on this format because we're looking for big plays on FanDuel as opposed to volume. Like we would be with CD Lamb. But yeah, Pickens, perfect for this type of format. Let's clear this out. let's put Pickens in the captain again. Where'd he go? All right, so we got Pickens in the captain. Let's get Dak in there. Run it back with Saquon again. 7,400. That leaves us with. Let's throw Turpin in there. We like him for the salary relief. 9,700 per guy. If we wanted to go with the Eagles defense again, leaves us with 11,600. We have options like getting A.J. Brown in there along with Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith. That's a build that I like. I think it kind of builds itself, honestly. If we wanted to swap out Barkley too for Jalen Hurts, let's say. So we got Hurts. Let's say we wanted to put in CeeDee Lamb. Let's get the Eagles defense out of there. Let's put CeeDee Lamb. So we got Dak with a double stack, a triple stack actually, including Turpin. 9,600 left. We could get Devontae Smith in there to go with Jalen Hurts. We could get Dallas Goedert in there to go with Jalen Hurts. If we did that and we wanted to swap out Turpin, that would help us to, well, not quite get the Eagles defense in there, but you have Ferguson as an option. Also not a bad option there. So you got Hurts to Goddard, then you'd have Lamb, Ferguson, and Pickens. I don't typically like to go like three wide receivers or three receivers like that. I would tend to stick with that defense and try to get like either one of those Philly receivers in there or Turpin or something like that. Turpin being a gadget player, like I don't mind him as much going in with another couple receivers on that team. So there you go, guys. Make sure to hit that like button. Looking for 30 likes so I can put out a shorter video a little bit later on. I'll give you my my complete thoughts as we get closer to lock. I'll be able to put my my favorite plays in the comment section as I did last year throughout the season. Make sure to hit the subscribe. Secret Weapon is coming in a few weeks. Hit subscribe. You're going to want to get access to this beta. It's going to be for my YouTube subscribers, and it's going to be free. So make sure you're subscribed and hit me a message on Twitter. I'm going to launch a Discord prior to like the release of this tool. So make sure to hit me up on Twitter at Pumacom or at Heatseeker Sports, and we'll get you access to the Discord channel as well. So make sure to do that. Thanks for watching, guys. That's it for this week. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything. I should have the main slate show out relatively quickly. I'm going to have a show, obviously, for all these showdown shows this season. We're going to have one for Friday's game as well. This one we're getting up early. Feel really good about this game. The breakdown with the situations going on here with new defensive coordinator. We lost our offensive coordinator on Philly. That's going to bring us back to Nick Sirianni, which could be dangerous this season. He's going to be, probably mostly calling the plays. They brought in, I believe, the passing game coordinator from Philly. Last time they tried to hire or promote internally for that offensive coordinator role, it was a disaster for Philly. But we'll see how it goes this year. Kellen Moore, obviously now the head coach with the New Orleans Saints, but he was one of the reasons why I liked the Eagles a lot last year. I like them again this year. They seem like they're matured as a team, but I do like Vic Fangio as a defensive coordinator. I think he kind of brings a lot of levity to the team, and we saw last year like they just had a dominant defense, and I love that with Vic Fangio. So I like the Eagles' chances this year, and I like their chances against these Cowboys in week 1. But don't sleep on the passing game of the Cowboys this week. They're going to be looking to make a statement, and I will see you guys later on.